and I'm going to show you the largest projects, the largest renewable energy projects in each different renewable energy sector as we travel across the country, just because I thought that that would be an interesting way to kind of give you a picture of what's going on in Canada that you might not know about. So this is the largest tidal energy project in Canada, and in fact it's the third largest tidal energy project in the world. It's the Annapolis Royale generating station. It's a 20 megawatt station. Again, it's in the Bay of Fundy. And it's on a structure that's quite large that was actually originally intended for moving people from one place to another, but it's turned into an energy tidal power plant. It generates 50 gigawatts of electricity annually, which is enough to power 4,000 homes. So quite a large power station, 20 megawatt station that in a year produces 50 gigawatts. So that is our largest tidal project. And it's right here in the Bay of Fundy. What you're looking at here is the largest wind project, one of the turbines from the largest wind project in Canada, 350 megawatts, and that's about an $800 million project, 175 of these huge turbines. This is in Quebec. The wind farm is located in an unorganized area, meaning it's a relatively rural area. It's close to Quebec City, and we're going to pull off Highway 1 to show you this project. And it's the largest in Canada. Again, it's $800 million. It created 565 jobs. During the peak of the construction, there's about 20 permanent jobs. One of the things I really like, actually, about this website that I took this information from is that they really don't inflate their numbers. They show you exactly how many people were employed. I'm sure there was a lot of spin-off jobs for all the hotels people stayed in and all the cups of coffee that people bought from Tim Hortons and all that. But in this particular case, they're really just focusing on the direct jobs that were created, which I think is cool. But that is a good number of jobs, and of course it doesn't take that many people to run a wind turbine on an ongoing basis once it's built. But there are a lot of jobs in the manufacturing, the construction, the installation. So that gives you a sense of that project. Here's a picture of what it looks like, just to give you kind of an aerial view. A huge project, and again, that's 350 megawatts. So just to give you a sense of that, again, just by comparison to that tidal project, that's 20 megawatts. And that's 4,000 homes. So, I mean, 350 megawatts is a massive, massive project. Quebec is, a leader in renewable energy in a variety of ways. They also have the Robert Bourassa generating station on La Grande River, northern Quebec, which is the largest hydro dam in Canada, which is a 5,616 megawatt project. I'm just reading that off my phone. So that's the biggest hydro dam in Canada, and a massive, massive dam. I mean, a tremendous amount of power. So, I mean, each megawatt is, what did I say before, 164 homes? So you do the math, 5,616 megawatts, a very large dam. In fact, Quebec gets the overwhelming majority of its electricity from hydro, 96.78%. A little bit of it is purchased from outside of Quebec, from Churchill Falls. But the remainder, the overwhelming majority is from Hydro-Quebec, 81.21%. They do get a tiny, tiny fraction from coal power and nuclear power. And even with wind in the mix, it only really makes up a small portion compared to the amount that comes from hydro. So Quebec is one of the cleaner electricity generating provinces, largely because of being blessed with a tremendous amount of water power. But what we're increasingly seeing is that even the portion that's coming from other sources like coal, oil, and gas is being replaced increasingly by power from wind, solar, and other sources. I actually found that power project, this one here, the Rivière de Moulins, excuse my horrible French accent, I found that actually on this amazing website. And if you don't take anything else from this presentation, I do really strongly encourage you to check out this Indigenous Renewable Energy Mapping Project. What you see here is on the map just projects that have Indigenous communities involved in them with an equity stake or some sort of direct involvement in Canada. So I actually found that one project that I was just showing you there, believe it or not, just as I was scrolling through this map. It's an integrated Google map, trying to figure out which projects were the closest to the highway so we could make arrangements to visit a bunch of these places, and actually realized that this amazing project, which has a partial ownership from a First Nations community in Quebec, was one of the projects along the way. So you'll be hearing a bunch more from us about that project. We're also going to be interviewing some really interesting people in Quebec who will give us more of a picture of the project. But yeah, do please check out this Indigenous Renewable Energy Mapping Project. Just for the sake of taking a jump back to Prince Edward Island, where I am right now, I just wanted to point out that I noticed that there was actually 2 projects on Prince Edward Island on this map that I was just showing you. They're both solar projects on the roofs of First Nations community buildings. I think one's an admin building and one's a school. We're going to try to check those out while we're here, but very cool to know that there's a couple of those projects right here on the island. Prince Edward Island is, of course, Mi'kmaq territory, and we'll be visiting those projects on our way, actually, to go visit the North Cape Wind Center, which is the Wind Energy Industry Association Training Center, which is quite a large wind farm and training center in the northern part of Prince Edward Island. This, just to kind of continue on that story of First Nations and energy projects, the Six Nations were the landlord of the largest wind farm in Canada for a little while, close to Hamilton. So just kind of moving our way across Canada, we've gone from the Atlantic coast to Quebec. Now we're in Ontario, talking about the largest solar farm. This very large project was actually just shortly after it was built, was beaten by another project in Kingston in terms of the size of the project as being the biggest in Canada. But this very large project was particularly interesting to me because the Six Nations, which is an amalgamation of a number of different First Nations communities in the region, all have an ownership stake. So this particular project is 100 megawatts, produces power to 17,000 Ontario homes a year, and as you can see, what's written here, it says it was the largest solar farm until a new farm comes online in Kingston. After the story was written, it actually has come online. So the project is part of a $5 billion deal with Samsung that Ontario made, and that deal in total actually brings online 1,369 megawatts. So that's a whole bunch of different projects, which was all part of their Green Energy Investment Act. I will go into more detail about specifics of Ontario in the weeks ahead as we're traveling across the country. I'm also going to do more of an in-depth piece looking just at Prince Edward Island as a case study right before we leave. Just wanted to kind of give you a sense of these projects here. So I'm going to just focus a bit more on the specifics of the project, and then we'll go into the larger policy questions later. But the point is that this very large project with 445,000 solar panels that were manufactured by Canadian Solar in London, Ontario, is partially owned by this First Nations community. And here's a quote from the chief, Ava Hill, who said that the deal is a giant leap forward in getting the community's land rights recognized and achieving financial autonomy. Samsung's leasing the land from Ontario, but they get the rent. And it's exciting because Ontario is acknowledging that they're the landowners and the landlords because there's still a struggle over their land rights. And, of course, the Six Nations Standoff is something that's been going on for quite a while. In fact, I remember being a student in college, and when we were in Ottawa for a meeting of the Canadian Federation of Students, a number of people went to go visit the standoff and learn from some of the local Indigenous people. In fact, a friend of mine, the same person I quoted earlier, Christine, ended up getting married to a guy there and staying there. There's been this fight over land in that region that goes back for a very long way, and over a decade of a real holdout between First Nations people and government stopping a project from being able to be built. But I thought this was such a positive story to hear about how this particular deal was actually giving an ownership stake to the First Nations community. It was actually moving forward a number of objectives. Isn't it nice when a development project can actually be part of a solution instead of a problem and really create win-wins for everybody? In this particular case, the Six Nations receive a 10% equity stake of the 404-hectare solar project, which means a payment of $27 million and $38 million, respectively, over the next 20 years. So a good chunk of money for this project, which I think is a really positive thing. So that project was outpaced in terms of size by this one in Kingston, which here's another piece that I pulled from a news story, which I thought was interesting because they were actually highlighting that not only was this the largest solar project in terms of the amount of energy being produced, but it's actually the largest bond-financed solar power project, meaning that people invested in this project and actually get a return from it. So, another example of sort of interesting financing opportunities. It's not just about big banks and big companies, but people actually had the ability to buy bonds in this and get an annual return, which I think is quite interesting. So here's another piece that was actually, this one I believe was from the Financial Post. And again, all of the links will be in the show notes, so you'll be able to read more about that if you're interested in digging in a bit more to the details. But largest solar project in Canada is in Kingston. Did you know that in Saskatchewan we have both the first and also the largest, because it's the first, geothermal power plant? Of course, there's lots of geothermal that's producing heat for people's homes or for buildings. Well, I shouldn't say a lot. There's some. But there, up until now, was actually not a geothermal power plant. And the difference, if you're scratching your head trying to understand what I mean, is that basically, using pipes to use the heat differential from the surface and subsurface, you can produce, heat or cooling for a home or a building, just simply by pumping that water underground. Different distances depending on the temperatures and what's underground in that region. So it makes more or less sense in different locations. But there's also the potential. What you can do is you can actually use the steam that is coming from inside the earth to actually turn a turbine. There's parts of the world like, say, for example, Iceland, where they produce a tremendous amount of geothermal electricity. Or what's called cogeneration, because there's both heat that's used, piped directly into buildings, as well as electricity from turning a turbine. And we're building the first plant of its kind in Saskatchewan, which, this kind of cute piece from Desmog blog highlights, that Saskatchewan was actually one of the biggest holdouts, in fact, even threatened to take the Canadian government to court over the national carbon tax plan. So they're not exactly associated with being a leader on all things to do with climate. I think it's worth pointing out that Saskatchewan does have a number of big wind turbines. We saw one of them driving along Highway 1 on the way to Toronto, and I'll be stopping there to talk more about it when we're traveling back again. But interesting to hear about this move towards geothermal in Saskatchewan. It's nice to see a positive news story related to Saskatchewan and climate change. Premier Brad Wall there has been a bit of wall of opposition to action on climate change. You see what I did there? Not very clever. Okay. This move towards geothermal in Saskatchewan is definitely a positive step in the right direction. One of the other interesting things that was in this piece, which I wanted to highlight, was they talked about how, people who are pipe fitters, have an opportunity to take those skills that they have, which are mostly used in the oil and gas sector today, and apply it to geothermal. There really is a correlation between the skill set that people have, when it comes to pipe fitting as it relates to oil and gas, and how that can translate into jobs in geothermal. I for one, would love to see much more done in this area. There's actually a tremendous amount of geothermal potential, particularly in the north, sort of areas that are a little bit further away, but also where there's way less job opportunities. So it seems like a real natural thing to sort of strategically focus on, and I'm not sure why there isn't more of that happening. Maybe we'll dig a bit more into this specific issue a little down the road. But just to tell you, the biggest geothermal project is in Saskatchewan. There we go. We're moving our way across Canada. This is one of my favorite projects to talk about because it's in a place with a very cool name, which is Vulcan, Alberta. Who knew there was a place in Alberta called Vulcan? I did not. This is another project we're going to go and visit. It's actually quite a large wind facility. If I'm not mistaken, it's over 100 megawatts, maybe even close to 2. Sorry, I don't have the number right in front of me. But here's a picture of some of the guys who worked on the site. You've got to love the Canadian flag right in the foreground there. Just a couple more pictures of this project that come from the company's website who was involved. This is, I guess what I really like about this is it's not really the picture that you think of when you think of renewable energy. Often we sort of associate renewable energy with environmentalists and, folks with dreadlocks and, the kind of scene in British Columbia. The reality is that actually the majority of these big projects are in, places like Vulcan, Alberta, or northern Quebec, or the Bay of Fundy. Or Kingston, Ontario. These big projects are job creators. They're real economic opportunities for people, and they're really making a real big difference in terms of climate change. So here's this very large and very interesting project in Vulcan, Alberta. All of a sudden, a place that's known for something other than the fact that it's associated with Star Trek, apparently. I'm not sure if they got their name because of Star Trek or what. I will try to get to the bottom of that for you as we travel across Canada. Does anybody know? Please tell me in the comments. Getting to the end of our tour here across Canada, I just wanted to highlight one thing. Did you notice something missing from this tour? It was British Columbia. It's funny because the West Coast is often thought of as like sort of the most environmentally conscious, most environmentalist part of the country, and definitely there's a lot of people who move to British Columbia because of all that. But when you actually look at where the biggest projects are, the majority of them are not in BC. We of course have a huge amount of hydropower. The overwhelming majority of BC's electricity comes from hydro. Just like in Quebec, it's over 90% of our power comes from BC Hydro. But also, like many other places across Canada, we still have a long way to go in terms of transportation and heating. I've heard estimates as much as 60% of our power in terms of transportation and heating. When you put that into the mix, it's about 60% of our energy that isn't coming from renewable sources. So there is still a ways to go in terms of bringing online more solar, more wind, more of the right kind of projects that people want in the province. But part of that is of course we have to electrify transportation. We have to think about how we design our cities, the same sorts of things we're dealing with elsewhere. I just thought it was interesting to point out that BC actually is not the home to any of the largest renewable energy projects in the country. Although who knows, that might change now that we have this new government in BC. There's definitely an opportunity for all kinds of interesting things to happen. And it's worth pointing out that we may be competing with Alberta, who's increasingly bringing online all kinds of renewable energy projects as well. I would love to see this be a competition all across Canada, who can have the largest, the best, the smartest, the most cost-effective, create the most jobs with renewable energy. That's the kind of race that we really should be having. The point is that we need to speed it up. We need to be positive because there really is so much opportunity, but we need to go out there and get it. This book that I just put on your screen is a great resource for you. I think it'll be one of the books that we deal with in our upcoming book club. You saw that we talked before about a number of different books. This one, Reinventing Fire, by a guy named Amory Lovins from the Rocky Mountain Institute, is, I think, absolutely critical if you're interested in climate solutions. He goes into a ton of detail about what can be done by businesses, by individuals at the city, regional, and state level in the United States. A really positive and forward-thinking and very well-researched book, where he goes into a ton of detail about how all this can be done cost-effectively, intelligently, in ways that create real opportunities and can have really positive implications. So that's Reinventing Fire. I definitely encourage you to go check that out by Amory Lovins. If you're interested in the book club, shoot me a message, whether it be on Facebook, or you can just put it in the comments right under here. Once we start rolling out our book club meetings, I will let you know. So that brings us to the third and final part of the Great Climate Race Live, episode 6, which is our update. I've already been kind of teasing out pieces of this along the way, but I'll just leave you, because I've been going for quite a while now. It's already been over an hour. I'm going to give you just one little taste. I've been lucky enough to have the chance to be going for some runs on the beach, barefoot on this beautiful red sand in Prince Edward Island. We are still raising money per kilometer using our new prototype app, which gives you the ability to raise money per kilometer, which I think is very, very cool, and I have to say it's been very motivating. Our goal for the entire summer was 120 kilometers, which we started in July, and I'm happy to say that we've already passed that. I've already actually passed 125 kilometers in running activity. So we've actually just increased that target up down to 150, maybe even 180 kilometers by the end of the road trip, depending on how many stops we do and all the different places we go. I've given you a taste of some of the places we're going in the near future. We have a bunch of interviews with some really, really interesting people coming up in Montreal, in Ottawa, in Winnipeg, in Calgary, and then back in British Columbia, meeting with a bunch of really interesting people who are going to help us tell the story of renewable energy in Canada. Also going to be going for runs with a bunch of different run clubs and groups. Last week, I actually ran in the Color Run. If you want to see pictures of that, go check out our Instagram. And that was very cool in Charlottetown. Ran in the Color Run, which if you haven't seen it before, you really got to see it. It's a pretty neat event. Long story short, it's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing to be here on PEI. Happy to be running around barefoot, loving that. I'm going to try to enjoy that for the rest of this weekend, and then we hit the road again on, let's see, what day? On Tuesday. We will be starting our way back across Canada. If you have any suggestions of places you think we should go, people you think we should run with, projects you think we should check out, people you think we should interview, put them in the comments, send me a message. We are always eager to hear your thoughts, your ideas. Thank you so much for watching the Great Climate Race Live, episode number 6. I hope that was informative and interesting for you. I certainly enjoyed doing the research, pulling it all together. It was really only just a slice, a taste of what's possible, what's out there, what's going on in this country, but I hope it got you curious, got you interested, got you thinking about what else could be done. We're hoping that you'll get involved with the Great Climate Race International Virtual Race in the last weekend of October and in the months leading up to it, raising money for renewable energy one step at a time. Right now, if you go to greatclimaterace.org, you can sign up for information, you can be part of our survey and give us some feedback and some ideas, and if you would like to, I would love it if you would go and pledge per kilometer for activity. I've been collecting pledges, which gives me the ability to raise money with every kilometer that we run and walk across Canada. Really means a lot. Your support is not only motivating, but it helps contribute to an important project for the Tsleil-Waututh Nation in Vancouver. So with that, I thank you so much again for your time, and I hope I catch you next week at 12 noon on the Great Climate Race Live every Friday at 12 noon. Have a great weekend. I hope you are enjoying the sunshine. Take care.